At 2 a.m., my stepbrother stabbed me in the shoulder with a screwdriver. As blood ran down my arm, my parents laughed and said, "Stop being dramatic." With my last bit of strength, I sent an SOS before passing out. What happened next shook the entire courtroom. You know, there are some moments in life that just shatter you. Moments so profoundly unfair, so utterly brutal, they redraw the map of your entire world. For me, Kenya Mack, then a 19-year-old private in the United States Army, it happened in the suffocating Texas summer, at 2 a.m. Not on some distant battlefield, but right inside my own childhood bedroom. And the people holding the weapon? My stepbrother, and my own parents. My stepbrother Dylan, his face twisted into a mask of pure alcohol and hatred, kicked my door open. He had a Phillips head screwdriver clutched in his hand, and before I could even process what was happening, he lunged. I still remember the sickening crack as it went through my right clavicle, pinning me to the wall like a grotesque butterfly. A scream, raw and primal, tore from my throat, but the real horror, that was still waiting. My father, Thomas, and my stepmother, Evelyn, appeared in the doorway, drawn by the noise. My eyes, wide with pain and terror, pleaded with them. Please. Help me. But their faces. They were just annoyed. And then Evelyn, with a sickeningly sweet voice, said, "Oh, now Kenya, don't be so dramatic." My father just sighed, her brother's drunk. She always did love the attention. Can you believe it? They actually laughed. They laughed while I was bleeding, pinned to a wall. They had no idea that in that moment, through the agony, I had just managed to send a 3-letter signal. A signal that was about to burn their entire fabricated world to ash. See, the roots of that night, the real betrayal, they went back a long, long way. All the way back to Thanksgiving, 4 years earlier. I was 15, and I held a miracle in my hands, an acceptance letter from the University of Texas at Austin for their prestigious summer astrophysics program. To me, it wasn't just paper. It was proof that the quiet, studious girl who was too much wasn't useless. It was a shield against Evelyn's passive aggression and Dylan's outright contempt. I kept it folded in my pocket all day, a secret comfort, in the chaotic buzz of Thanksgiving. That night, at the dinner table, when there was a brief lull, I slid the letter to my father. "Dad," I whispered, "I got this." And for a single, breathtaking second, something incredible happened. He smiled. A real, genuine smile that reached his eyes. "Well, I'll be," he said. "Evelyn, honey, read this out loud. Let everyone hear what Kenya has been up to." That was the moment the trap was sprung. Evelyn took the letter, beaming. She theatrically put on her reading glasses, her red nails tapping the paper. "Of course, dear," she chirped. She cleared her throat, commanding the room. "Oh, everyone, listen to this. Kenya has been accepted into the University of Texas's summer camp for cognitive special support." She delivered it with saccharine enthusiasm. Isn't that just wonderful? We must always support her efforts, even if she is a little different. The words hung in the air. A snicker. A nervous titter. Then Dylan roared with laughter. My dream shattered. "No." I stammered, my voice small, foreign. "That's not what it says. It's for gifted students in astrophysics." Evelyn looked at me, a perfect mask of gentle concern, and patted my hand. "Oh, sweetie, don't be embarrassed," she cooed, dripping with false sympathy. "We're proud of you no matter what." With that single, devastating sentence, she extinguished the brightest star in my sky. She reframed my greatest achievement as a disability, with the loving smile of a saint. Tears welled up. I looked at my father, begging him to intervene. But he just sat there, that rare smile gone, replaced by a tight, uncomfortable expression. He wouldn't meet my eyes. No one would. That night, crying in my room, he knocked. Not to comfort. "You embarrassed Evelyn tonight," he said, cold and flat. "You need to apologize to her for ruining the party." The words hit harder than any physical blow. I was being ordered to apologize to the person who had just publicly humiliated me. My tears stopped. A cold, hard knot formed in my stomach. I finally saw him for what he was, a coward. Willing to sacrifice his own daughter for a moment's peace in his second marriage. That night, I ripped the acceptance letter into tiny, irreparable pieces. I let the confetti of my broken dreams fall into the trash can. In that house, my success was worse than my failure. It was a crime. I thought joining the army would be an escape. I pictured a clean break. But the ghosts of my past. They enlisted right alongside me. They wore my uniform, slept in my bunk, and screamed in my ear louder than any drill sergeant. Basic training was a shock, but the real enemy lived inside my head. On the obstacle course, crawling under barbed wire, when my drill sergeant yelled, "Mac, you are too damn slow. Are you weak?" His voice faded. It was Evelyn's sickly sweet tone echoing in my mind, the poor thing. She's just not built like the other kids. I was on the verge of quitting, of ringing that bell. What if they were right? My biggest challenge was the rope. Day after day, I'd fail. The voices would start their chorus, "You're going to fail. You're not good enough." Then one afternoon, Sergeant Ruiz, a woman whose calm voice carried more weight than any scream, knelt beside me. "Your problem isn't in your muscles, Private," she said, tapping her temple. "It's up here. Who are you fighting on that rope? Is it you, or is it some ghost you brought with you from home?" Her words hit me with the force of a physical blow. A ghost you brought with you from home. She was right. I wasn't fighting the rope. I was fighting Evelyn's pity, Dylan's contempt, the 15-year-old girl whose dreams were torn to shreds. That weekend, in the base library, I found a book by Brené Brown, Daring Greatly. It felt like someone had cracked open my skull. I read one sentence that stopped my heart: "Vulnerability is not weakness." All my life, I'd been taught the opposite. I'd come to the army seeking impenetrable armor. But this book told me my hurt, my history, wasn't my weakness. It was the birthplace of my courage. A week later, our final test on the obstacle course. As I stood before the rope, the ghosts started whispering. But this time, a new voice answered them, quiet but clear: "Vulnerability is not weakness." I took a deep breath. My muscles screamed. The ghosts assaulted me. But every upward pull was an act of rebellion. Every inch gained was me telling them they had no power over me anymore. I wasn't the broken little girl. I was a soldier. I was a fighter. When my hand finally closed over the top, the cheers of my platoon erupted. Sergeant Ruiz gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. It was more validation than my own father had ever given me. But as the cheers faded, a new, unsettling question took root. I'd conquered the rope, but how could I win this war when I couldn't even win the one inside my own head? I sat alone on the bleachers, watching the sunset, when Sergeant Ruiz walked toward me. She didn't say a word, just sat down, and handed me a cold bottle of water. "Friday night," she said, her voice even and calm. "My place. I'm making chili if you don't have plans." It wasn't an order. It wasn't pity. It was just an invitation. In my entire life, I couldn't remember a single adult inviting me home with such straightforward, unconditional kindness. Her apartment was small, lived in, smelling of cinnamon, cumin, old books. Her huge German shepherd, Gunnar, lumbered over and leaned against my leg. She didn't pepper me with questions. She asked, "How are you feeling today?" And the question was so genuine, so free of agenda, it almost made me cry. When the chili was ready, we sat at her small kitchen table. This was the first meal I'd eaten in years where I wasn't on high alert, rehearsing my sentences, analyzing every facial expression. The silence was comfortable. It tasted better than any Thanksgiving turkey I'd ever had. Later, on her porch, the words tumbled out before I could stop them. "My family," I started, my voice barely a whisper, "they think I'm a disappointment." Ruiz just rocked gently. I waited for the pity, the judgment, but they never came. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady and clear: "The army doesn't care where you came from, Private. We care where you're going, and the people who really matter will help you get there, not hold you back." A physical weight, one I'd carried for a decade, lifted. Someone believed in me without needing proof. Before I left that night, Ruiz handed me a small black pocket-sized notebook. "If things at home get bad," she said, her voice serious, strategic, "don't just take it. Document. Date, time, who said what, who did what. Turn your feelings into data." She met my eyes. "Data is ammunition, Mac. Never go into a fight without it." I took the notebook. It felt heavier than it should. It was a battle plan. I was no longer a helpless victim. I was a soldier, an intelligence-gathering mission behind enemy lines. The war was far from over, but for the first time, I felt like I had a fighting chance. My first leave from basic training wasn't a homecoming. It was a tactical insertion into hostile territory. Driving back to the San Antonio suburbs, the hot, familiar dread coiled in my stomach. I clutched the small black notebook, a hard comfort in my duffel bag. The first few days were a fragile truce, a performance of strained civility. Evelyn was sickeningly sweet, telling me how proud they were. Dylan's sullen avoidance was a blessing. My father, Thomas, was a ghost, offering vague smiles but no eye contact. I played my part, senses on high alert, waiting for the attack. It came late on the third night. A soft knock, just after midnight. Evelyn. She stood in her silk nightgown, a mask of sorrow on her face, eyes glistening with rehearsed tears. "Kenya, honey," she whispered, voice cracking as she glided into my room. "It's your father. He's not doing well since you left. The doctor thinks it might be severe depression. Your absence has been really hard on him." Expertly aimed darts of guilt. The old Kenya, desperate for affection, wanted to believe her. To feel responsible. But Ruiz's voice cut through the fog. "Data is ammunition." I kept my face neutral. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, words like stones in my mouth. "What does the doctor recommend?" Evelyn's eyes lit up. "He's recommended a special therapy program, a wonderful facility, but it's very expensive. With Dylan's troubles, money is tight." She looked at me, pleading. I didn't want to ask, "But with your army salary?" I held her gaze. "I'll have to think about it." The old Kenya would have agreed. The new Kenya was buying time. The next morning, I waited until they were gone. I walked to my father's study, a room I was never allowed to enter as a child. My heart hammered, not with fear, but with cold, determined resolve. Reconnaissance. In the top desk drawer, under old bills, was a folder. Inside, no doctor's referral. Instead, a thick stack of threatening letters from the Lauberge Casino in Lake Charles, Louisiana, all addressed to Dylan. The amount he owed was staggering. Behind them, a final warning from our bank about the mortgage. They weren't struggling because my father was sad. They were drowning because my stepbrother was a gambling addict. The rage that filled me was cold and sharp. Data. Ammunition. That evening, I was ready. I found Evelyn in the kitchen, alone. My phone was in my pocket, the voice memo app already running. "I was in Dad's study this morning," I began, my voice steady. "I saw the letters from the casino about Dylan's debt." Evelyn's sorrowful mother persona vanished. Her face hardened, her eyes turning to steel. The mask was off. "So what?" she snapped, low and dangerous. "He's your brother. You have a responsibility to help him. What's the point of that military paycheck if you're not going to use it to take care of your family?" "He's not my brother," I stated calmly, "and I'm not paying for his damned gambling addiction." Her eyes narrowed. "You think you're so much better than us now, in your little uniform." She stepped closer, a venomous hiss. "Don't you forget who raised you. You will regret being so ungrateful, Kenya." "I'll make sure of it." I didn't flinch. I just stood there. When she was done, I walked away. In my pocket, my phone had captured every single word. Click. My first piece of hard evidence. My refusal detonated a Cold War. Dylan, no longer hiding his resentment, began a campaign of petty sabotage. He'd accidentally knock over my coffee. He'd use up all the hot water. Childish, pathetic acts of aggression, relentless, designed to wear me down. I said nothing. I just documented everything. The final straw came a few days before my leave was over. I went to my closet for my spare dress uniform. My pride. A symbol of everything I'd accomplished. It wasn't there. A cold dread washed over me. I searched and then I found it. Thrown in a heap in Dylan's closet, crumpled, covered in dust and what looked like a smear of grease. It was a deliberate act of desecration. A silent, unambiguous message. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I calmly took out my phone, my hands perfectly steady. I took a photo. A close-up of the grease. Then I picked it up and walked back to my room, closing the door. My arsenal was growing. The Cold War was at its breaking point. My quiet defiance, my refusal to be their ATM, was a simmering insult to Dylan's fragile ego. The petty sabotage wasn't working. I wasn't breaking. So he decided to escalate. To burn me to the ground. Symbolically. I had just gotten back from a run, feeling strong, clear-headed. As I reached for the back door, he stepped out from the garage, blocking my path. His eyes were bloodshot, his face a twisted sneer, the air thick with cheap beer. "You're not going to give me the money, are you?" he slurred. An accusation, not a question. I didn't take the bait. "I told you, Dylan, I'm not paying for your mistakes." A dark, manic grin spread across his face. "Fine," he spat, "then I'll just take something else of yours." Before I could react, he shoved past me and stormed into the house. A cold shock of adrenaline shot through me. I sprinted after him, my heart hammering like a trapped bird. "Dylan, what are you doing?" I followed him to my bedroom. The door was wide open. He was at my closet, pulling out the one thing he knew was sacred to me. Not my laptop, not my books. He was pulling out the heavy garment bag that held my army service uniform, my Class A uniform. It wasn't just clothes. It was a testament, earned through blood, sweat, and tears. The crisp blue fabric, the polished brass, the gleaming metals, the sharp creases I'd spent hours perfecting. It was the symbol of my escape, my new identity, my honor. "Dylan, stop." I screamed, a primal panic rising. "Don't you touch that." He just laughed, a wild, unhinged sound. He turned, holding the uniform like a trophy, his eyes filled with triumphant hatred. "This is what you care about, right? This stupid costume." He bolted from the room, heading for the back door. My mind screamed. Out into the glaring Texas sun of the backyard he went, dragging the garment bag. He ripped the uniform out and threw it onto the yellowing grass. Just then, the sliding glass door to the patio opened, and Evelyn and my father stepped out. They didn't look alarmed. They didn't move to intervene. They looked like spectators who had paid for front row seats. Dylan saw his audience and his cruelty swelled. He puffed out his chest and shouted, "Hey everybody, come and see the little soldier girl and her clown suit. The piece of trash who thinks she's too good for her own family." My blood ran cold. I started to lunge forward, a desperate, primal need to save my uniform. But a hand clamped down hard on my upper arm, holding me back. It was my father. I turned to him, my eyes pleading. "Dad, stop him, please." He just shook his head, his face a mask of weary resignation. He wouldn't even look at me. He looked at the uniform on the ground. "Just let him be, Kenya," he said, his voice flat. "It's just a set of clothes. Just a set of clothes." The word struck me with the force of a physical blow. In that single sentence, he invalidated everything I was, everything I had fought to become. He erased my struggle, my sacrifice, my pride. Dylan grabbed the red plastic gas can. The sharp, nauseating smell of gasoline filled the air as he poured it over the dark blue jacket, soaking the fabric. He splashed it over the medals, the ribbons, the rank insignia. "No!" I screamed, struggling against my father's grip, but he held me fast. Then Dylan pulled out a matchbook. He struck a match. The small flame flickered in the sunlight. He tossed it. The world erupted in a whoosh of orange and black. Fire. A hungry, roaring beast. It devoured the uniform instantly. I watched in horror as the flames licked at the fabric, curling the edges into black ash. The colorful ribbons blistered and melted into unrecognizable plastic slag. The very symbol of my honor was being consumed in a bonfire of his jealous rage. I stopped struggling. I just watched it burn. I tore my eyes away from the fire and looked at my parents. They weren't smiling, but their eyes were filled with a quiet, sickening satisfaction. The look of bullies who had finally dragged their victim down to their level. In their minds, they had just won. In that instant, something inside me shifted. The hot, frantic panic was washed away by a wave of something terrifyingly calm. The tears evaporated. The screams died in my throat. A profound, glacial stillness settled over me. I turned my head slowly and looked directly at my father, whose hand was still clamped around my arm. I didn't raise my voice. I spoke each word with a cold, deliberate precision, the sound cutting through the crackle of the flames like shards of ice. "Let me go." He blinked, startled by my tone. There was something in my voice, a finality he had never heard before, that made him flinch. His grip loosened. He let go. I walked forward, my steps even and measured, until I stood just a few feet from the smoldering, blackened ruin on the grass. Dylan was still standing there, a smug, victorious smirk on his face. I didn't look at the ashes. I looked right into his eyes. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I spoke just loudly enough for all three of them to hear every single word clearly. This is the last time, I said, my voice devoid of all emotion. The absolute last time any of you will touch what is mine. The last time you will disrespect me. The war you wanted. You've got it. Then I turned my back on them. On the ashes of my uniform, on the entire toxic wasteland of my childhood. I walked back into the house, up the stairs, and locked the door behind me. I pulled out my phone. My hands were perfectly steady. I sent a short, encrypted text to Sergeant Ruiz. Need to talk. Urgent. If you've ever had a final straw, a line crossed that changed absolutely everything, then you know what I felt in that moment. The Cold War was over. The hot war was about to begin. And I finally realized that the attack in the backyard was just a prelude. The main assault was coming tonight. That was the night Dylan would come for me with a screwdriver. That was the night it all truly began. Locked in my room, the smell of gasoline and burnt fabric still clinging to the air, I stared at the single word that flashed on my phone screen, acknowledged. The reply from Sergeant Ruiz was immediate. A beacon of calm in the chaotic aftermath. My heart was still hammering, but the cold resolve that had settled over me was hardening into something solid. I was no longer a daughter in shock. I was a soldier awaiting orders. My phone rang less than 5 minutes later. Mac, she said. No preamble. Her voice was crisp, professional, all business. Exactly what I needed. Situation report, private, she commanded. In a low, steady voice, I gave her the facts. I reported the incident in the backyard as if I were describing an enemy engagement. The destruction of my Class A uniform. My parents' complicit presence. Evelyn's unambiguous threat from the night before. I recounted the years of manipulation, the financial extortion, the systematic campaign to undermine my confidence. I told her about the evidence I'd collected, the voice memo, the photographs of the ruined uniform, the gambling debts. I spoke for 10 minutes straight, uninterrupted. When I finished, there was a brief silence. I could hear her breathing, slow and controlled. Good, she finally said. The single word was a validation of everything. You have your ammunition. Now you need a general. Write this down. I grabbed the black notebook she had given me. David Chen. He's with an organization in Austin called the Warriors Aegis. It's a pro bono legal group for veterans. Chen is a former JAG prosecutor. He's tough, he's smart, and he doesn't lose. Tell him Elena Ruiz sent you. And Mac, her voice grew even more serious, from this moment on, you do not engage with them alone. All contact goes through your lawyer. Understood. Hua, I replied. The military affirmation coming naturally. I had my mission. The next day, I drove to Austin. The office of the Warriors Aegis was in an old, unassuming brick building. It wasn't flashy, but it felt solid, serious. David Chen was a compact Asian American man in his late 40s. Smaller than I expected, dressed in a sharp suit, but his presence filled the room. He had the sharp, intelligent eyes of a hawk. Sergeant Ruiz called ahead, he said, his voice direct. She holds you in high regard. He didn't ask me how I was feeling. He got straight to the point. Show me your evidence. This was a language I understood. I laid out my file on his polished mahogany desk. The voice recording of Evelyn's threat. The time-stamped photos of my desecrated uniform. The copies of Dylan's gambling debts. The bank statements showing the money I had sent them under duress. I presented it all in chronological order, a cold, hard litany of my family's crimes. He examined each piece in complete silence, his expression unreadable. He played the audio file. Listening intently. The silence stretched on, thick with tension. My own hope hung in the balance. Finally, he took off his glasses and looked up at me. He nodded slowly, a single decisive gesture. This is more than enough, he said, his voice laced with a quiet intensity that sent a jolt of relief through me. We have a case. For the first time since this whole nightmare began, I felt a flicker of genuine hope. It wasn't just my pain anymore. It was a case. It was real. It was something that could be fought and won. They are bullies, Private Mac, Chen continued, steepling his fingers. And bullies only understand one thing, a superior show of force. We are not going to file a police report. Not yet. That's a messy public battle. We are going to set a trap. A Trojan horse. He leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with strategic brilliance. They want money, so we're going to let them think they're about to get a windfall. He laid out the plan. It was audacious and terrifying. You're going to call them. You will tell them that you've reconsidered, that you were wrong, and that you will agree to help with Dylan's debt. You will offer to sign the paperwork to leverage the equity in the house, the portion your father left you in his will. He held up a finger. But the signing will not happen at a bank. It will happen here, in this conference room. That will be our kill box. My blood ran cold at the thought. Go back there, face them again, lie to their faces. It felt impossible. But then I looked at David Chen, at the unwavering confidence in his eyes, and I remembered who I was. I was a soldier. This was my assignment. That evening, I sat in my car in a quiet parking lot, my heart pounding. It was time to deploy the bait. I took a few deep breaths, summoning every ounce of acting ability I possessed. I thought about the scared 15-year-old girl at the Thanksgiving table. I channeled all of that vulnerability into my voice and dialed Evelyn's number. She picked up on the second ring. What do you want, Kenya? She answered, her voice cold and hostile. I let out a shaky, manufactured sob. Mom, I choked out, hating the word as it left my lips. I've been thinking, and you were right. I sniffled, making it sound as pathetic as possible. Family is everything. I was wrong to be so selfish. I'll sign the papers. I'll do whatever it takes to help. There was a stunned silence on the other end. I could almost hear the greedy gears turning in her head. Then her voice, dripping with false, syrupy sweetness, came floating down the line. Oh, Kenya, honey, I knew you'd do the right thing. Your father will be so relieved. You're such a good girl. The praise I had once craved now turned my stomach. My legal advisor for my military benefits said he needs to oversee the signing, I added, repeating the script Chen had given me. We have to do it at his office in Austin. Of course, honey, whatever you need, she chirped, completely oblivious. She didn't question it for a second. Greed had made her blind. They had taken the bait. The trap was set. I hung up the phone, my hand trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of the performance. I took a deep, steady breath. I was walking back into the fire. But this time, I wasn't going in alone. And this time, I was the one holding all the weapons. The day of the meeting, I felt a strange and profound calm. It wasn't the absence of fear, but a clarity that pushed fear into the background. I was a soldier walking into a planned engagement. I knew the terrain. I knew the objective. And I had superior firepower. I wore my Class A uniform, the replacement I had painstakingly acquired, not as armor, but as a statement. When I walked into David Chen's conference room, I was not Kenya, the broken daughter. I was Private Mac, United States Army. I was there first, seated beside Chen at the head of a long, polished conference table. He was a picture of professional calm, arranging files with meticulous precision. Across the room, in a chair in the corner, sat a uniformed Austin police officer, a woman with a calm but watchful demeanor. And by the window, looking out over the city, stood an older man with a kind face and sad eyes. Mr. Miller, my former next-door neighbor, a retired cop. The pieces were in place. Then the door opened and they walked in. The victors, arriving to claim their prize. They were beaming, radiating a smug, triumphant energy that was almost suffocating. Dylan was practically bouncing on the balls of his feet, already spending the money in his head. Going to get me a new truck, he whispered loudly to my father, who clapped him on the back. Evelyn glided over to me, her face a mask of maternal pride. She placed a hand on my uniformed shoulder. I'm so proud of you, Kenya. I knew you'd come around. The touch felt like a spider crawling on my skin, but I didn't flinch. I just looked past her, my face a blank slate. They took their seats opposite us, their greed making them oblivious. They didn't notice the police officer in the corner or pay any mind to the older man by the window. They just saw the stack of papers in front of Chen, the documents they believed held their salvation. I sat in silence, my back ramrod straight. I waited for my general to begin the assault. Good afternoon, Chen began, his voice smooth and professional. He pushed a single document across the table. This is the proposed agreement to leverage Ms. Mac's equity in the property. He let them look at it, savoring their moment of triumph. However, he continued, his tone shifting slightly, becoming sharper, before we proceed, we have a few supplementary materials to review as part of our due diligence. He picked up a remote. The large screen on the wall, previously dark, flickered to life. The first image that appeared was a high-resolution photograph of my class uniform, smoldering in a blackened heap on the grass. Dylan snorted, a laugh rumbling in his chest. "Oh, come on. That was just a joke. Lighten up." Chen didn't acknowledge him. He clicked the remote again. The next image was a close-up of the collection letters from the Lauberge casino. Dylan's name and the staggering amount owed clearly visible. The smile on Dylan's face began to falter. Click. A copy of the bank statement showing the wire transfer from my account to theirs. My father shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The smug atmosphere in the room was rapidly evaporating, replaced by a thick, cold tension. And finally, Chen said, putting the remote down and picking up a small digital audio player. He pressed a button and Evelyn's voice, cold and venomous, filled the silent conference room. "You think you're so much better than us now, don't you? In your little uniform. You will regret being so ungrateful, Kenya. I'll make sure of it." The color drained from Evelyn's face. She looked like she had been slapped. That's illegal," she stammered, her voice a shrill squeak. "You recorded me without my permission." A thin, cold smile touched David Chen's lips. "Actually, ma'am, in the state of Texas, we operate under one-party consent, and Private Mac consented. So it's perfectly admissible." That's when the dam broke. "You little bitch." Dylan roared, slamming his fists on the table and lunging to his feet. "I'll kill you." Instantly, the police officer was out of her chair, her hand resting firmly on the butt of her holstered Glock. "Sit down," she commanded, her voice ringing with authority. "Now." Dylan froze, his face purple with rage, and slowly, shakily, sank back into his seat. My father looked like he was about to faint. Chen let the tension hang in the air for a moment longer before gesturing towards the man by the window, who now turned to face the room. "And this," Chen said, his voice calm and steady, "is Mr. Miller. I believe you know him. He was your neighbor for 15 years. He's also a retired detective with the San Antonio PD." Evelyn and Thomas stared at him, their faces a mask of pure, unadulterated horror. Recognition dawned. "Mr. Miller," Chen continued, "was in his yard on the day of the joke. He is prepared to testify under oath about witnessing Dylan's verbal threats, the act of arson, and your presence as complicit, and I quote, cheering spectators." It was over. I could see it in their eyes. The fight had gone out of them, replaced by the stark, cold terror of cornered animals. Evelyn stared at Thomas, her mouth opening and closing, but no sound came out. They had lost, and they knew it. Chen let the silence stretch, letting the weight of their defeat crush them. Then he slid a different set of documents across the table. 2 pages, bound with a simple staple. "You have 2 options," he said. His voice was like steel. "Option 1, I take this entire file, the audio, the photos, the financial records, and Mr. Miller's sworn testimony, and I walk it down the hall to the district attorney's office. Dylan will face felony charges for assault and arson. You and your husband," he looked directly at Evelyn, "will face charges for conspiracy and felony fraud. You will all likely do jail time." He paused, letting the words sink in. "Or there is option 2. He tapped the 2-page document. "You sign this agreement. It states that you relinquish any and all claim to the house, transferring the deed entirely to Private Mac. You will vacate the premises within 30 days. Furthermore, you will sign a legally binding no-contact order. You will never again attempt to contact, harass, or approach Private Mac in any way, shape, or form for the rest of your lives." 30 days later, on the 31st day, I stood alone in the doorway of my childhood home, new key in hand. The moving truck had rumbled away the afternoon before, a final, unceremonious departure. The house was mine, and it was terrifyingly silent. I walked through the empty rooms, my footsteps echoing on the bare hardwood floors. The silence was a physical presence, a heavy blanket. They had taken all the furniture, leaving ghosts behind. Faded squares on the walls marked where Evelyn's curated family photos, the ones that never included me, had once hung. It was as if they had never been here, yet their presence was everywhere. I made my way to my old bedroom, the scene of the attack. My hand went instinctively to the wall by the doorframe. There it was, a small, deep indentation in the drywall, a permanent scar from Dylan's screwdriver. I traced its outline with my finger. I had won. Legally. I was the victor. I owned the house, and they were gone, bound by a no-contact order. But standing there, it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like the ceasefire after a brutal war. The fighting was over, but the battlefield was scarred, and the cost had been immense. The last few weeks had been a blur of logistics and paperwork. Chen had handled everything with ruthless efficiency. They had signed the papers in his office without another word, their faces pale and drawn. They had packed under the watchful eye of a court-appointed supervisor. No dramatic confrontations. No final showdowns. They had simply vanished from my life, leaving a vast, echoing emptiness in their wake. I walked down to the kitchen and sat on the floor, my back against the cool cabinets. Forgiveness. The word had been rolling around in my head for days. I thought of my grandfather reading to me from his worn Bible, a line he often quoted, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do." As a child, I thought it was about their ignorance. Now I understood it wasn't about them at all. Forgiveness wasn't an act of absolution for the guilty. It was an act of liberation for the wounded. It wasn't about excusing their actions. It was about refusing to let their poison continue to run through my veins. It was about my own peace. I knew I couldn't call my father. A phone call would be an invitation for more manipulation. So instead, I found a pen and a single sheet of paper. I sat at the empty kitchen counter where he used to read the paper every morning, and I wrote him one final letter. I didn't accuse him. I didn't list his failures. I just told him my truth. "Dad," I wrote, "I think I spent my entire life trying to earn a single genuine smile from you. Just one. But on the night I needed you the most, the night I was bleeding in my own room, the smile you gave was for them. You chose your comfort over your daughter. I am done trying to earn something that you are incapable of giving." My hand paused, the pen hovering. Then I finished it. "I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because I deserve to be free from the weight of hating you. I deserve peace. Goodbye, Dad." I folded the letter, wrote his name, and left it on the counter. It was a message in a bottle cast out into an ocean I would never visit again. That was my farewell. A few days later, my phone buzzed with a notification, a new voicemail. It was my father's number. A knot of ice formed in my stomach. For a long moment, I just stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the delete button. The soldier in me screamed at me to erase it, to not let the poison back in. But the little girl inside me, the one who still foolishly hoped, had to know. I pressed play. His voice was a broken, trembling thing I had never heard before, thick with tears. Kenny, I got your letter. I'm so sorry. I was weak. I was a coward. Evelyn, she had so much control. It was easier to just go along. I never wanted to hurt you. Please, just give me one more chance to make it right. Just one chance." I listened to it once, then again. The little girl inside me wept, wanting to run back, wanting to believe this broken man could be the father she always wanted. But the soldier stood firm. The soldier saw the truth. His apology wasn't for me. It was for him. It was littered with excuses. I was weak, I was a coward, she had control. Weakness was a reason, not an excuse. He was sorry he got caught, not sorry for what he did. It was just another tactic, another form of manipulation wrapped in remorse. I had chosen myself in the lawyer's office. Now I had to choose myself again. My thumb moved deliberately across the screen. I pressed delete. The voicemail vanished. I had finally chosen myself completely and irrevocably. The healing began a week later, not with therapy or quiet reflection, but with the loud, cheerful chaos of friendship. Sergeant Ruiz showed up on a Saturday morning in a pickup truck. 2 other soldiers from my platoon with her, armed with paint rollers, toolboxes, and a stack of pizzas. "Thought you could use some reinforcements, Private," Ruiz said with a grin. For the first time, genuine laughter filled the rooms of that house. We worked all weekend, scraping old paint, patching holes, the sounds of our work and easy camaraderie chasing away the lingering ghosts. We turned the house from a mausoleum of painful memories into a blank canvas. Then I began to reclaim the territory. Dylan's old room, the source of so much resentment, was the first to go. I painted the walls a calm, steady gray, and filled it with weight benches and a treadmill. It became my home gym, a place of strength and discipline. My father's study, the room I was never allowed to enter, became my library. I filled the shelves with books, turning a space of secrets and lies into a haven of knowledge and peace. The act of rebuilding the house was the act of rebuilding my soul. With every coat of fresh paint, I was covering over a scar. With every room I repurposed, I was taking back a piece of my own history and rewriting it. I was transforming a prison built by others into a sanctuary I was building for myself. It was slow. It was hard. But for the first time, it felt like coming home. Years have passed. The house that was once a battlefield is now a sanctuary, filled with the warmth of sunlight and the quiet hum of a life rebuilt. The ghosts have long since been evicted, replaced by the comforting presence of well-worn books and the easy laughter of friends. The little girl who was once pinned to a wall is gone. In her place stands a woman, a sergeant in the United States Army. Sometimes, in the quiet moments of the morning before I put on my uniform, I'll stand in front of the mirror and look at my right shoulder. The scar is still there. It's a pale, silvery line against my skin now, faded with time, but it will never truly disappear. And I am grateful for that. For years, I saw it as a mark of shame, a brand of my family's betrayal. But I don't see it that way anymore. I've come to realize that this scar is the most important medal I have ever earned. It wasn't awarded to me in a ceremony. It was forged in fire and pain. It's not a symbol of my weakness. It's a permanent reminder of the war I survived, of the moment I chose to fight back, of the strength I never knew I had. It is my scar of honor, and it tells a story I was finally ready to share. I knew my story couldn't end with me, safe within the newly painted walls of my home. The weapons that David Chen and Sergeant Ruiz had given me, strategy, data, and a voice, were too powerful to keep to myself. I started working with Chen and the Warriors Aegis, volunteering on weekends. Together, we established a new outreach program, a specialized branch aimed directly at service members trapped in the silent horror of domestic abuse. We called it Operation Open Eyes. Our mission is simple: to help soldiers and veterans recognize the signs of abuse, to provide them with the legal and psychological resources to fight back, and to show them that they are not alone. I became one of its lead advocates. The voice that was once silenced by fear now echoes in auditoriums and conference rooms at military bases across the country. I stand on stages in front of young men and women in uniform, and I tell them my story. I tell them about the gaslighting, the manipulation, the violence. I show them that abuse doesn't always wear the face of a monster. Sometimes it wears the face of family. And I teach them how to turn their pain into data, their fear into a strategy, and their silence into a testimony. The work is my purpose. It's the legacy I am building, not on a foundation of anger, but of resilience. But my strength isn't just forged in the present. It's rooted in the past. And so, once a year, on the anniversary of my grandfather's passing, I make a pilgrimage. I drive the long, flat highway south to Corpus Christi. The air grows thick and salty as I get closer to the coast, a smell that has always felt like coming home. Elena Ruiz always comes with me. She never asks why this trip is so important. She just knows. She's no longer my sergeant. She's my family. The kind you choose, the kind that shows up. We walk along the same stretch of beach where my grandfather taught me about the strength of the sand dollars all those years ago. I no longer need to search for the perfect shell. I don't need to hold it in my hand to feel his strength anymore. Because I finally understand that he wasn't talking about the shell. He was talking about me. His strength is a part of me now, woven into the very fabric of my being. I stand at the edge of the water, letting the warm Gulf waves wash over my bare feet, and I talk to him in the whisper of the tide. I'm still fighting, Grandpa, I say to the endless blue horizon. And I'm winning. That is the story I carry with me. That is the legacy I share. And it all culminates in moments like this. I'm standing on a stage at Fort Jackson, the same base where I nearly broke. The auditorium is filled with hundreds of new recruits. Their faces a mixture of pride, excitement, and a deep, underlying fear. They are so young. They remind me of myself. I look out at them, and then I look directly into the camera that is live streaming my speech to thousands more across the world. I raise my hand and gently touch the scar on my shoulder, a gesture that has become my signature. They try to pin me to a wall, I say, my voice clear and steady, amplified by the microphone. They try to define me with their words, their anger, and their violence. They tried to break me, but all they did was set me free. I let my eyes travel across the sea of young faces, meeting as many of their gazes as I can. Real strength isn't about never falling. It isn't about never feeling weak or scared. Real strength is what happens when you have been pinned down, when you have been betrayed, when you have been abandoned by the very people who are supposed to protect you, and you still find a way to send out your signal. I lean closer to the microphone, my voice dropping to a more intimate, personal tone, speaking not just to the room, but to every single person listening in every corner of the world. If you are hearing this right now and you feel pinned down, if you feel trapped in a battle that no one else can see, I want you to know that you are not fighting alone. Your signal has been received. In the comments section of this video, I want you to do one simple thing. I want you to write, "I see you." That's it. No story, no explanation, unless you want to share. Just, "I see you." Let's create a signal flare so bright that it lights up the dark corners of the world. Let's show everyone who is fighting in silence that an entire army is here, ready to fight with them. Because no one deserves to fight alone. Sharing my full story, from the darkest moments to the dawn, has been a vital part of my own healing. I want to sincerely thank you for listening. Take care. Good luck.